grade 12 learners. Welcome to today's lesson for economics. My name is Mr. Mhlongo. This lesson is brought to you by Gauteng Department of Education in collaboration with Pagama Research and Development. Our today's lesson is a continuity from the previous lesson we had. So today our focus area is shifting. Remember, on our previous lesson we were doing inflation, but today we are clamping two last topics for your content or syllabus, which is tourism as well as environmental sustainability. So both topics will be covered fully so that you will be ready for your paper 2 examination. Remember that we've already covered all topics for paper 1. The next thing that is coming for the following week is a revision for our paper 1, which will be written on the 29th of August, 2024. Please join me. Let's see what we have in the pocket. The following are the lesson objectives that will be achieved during the course of this lesson. So after this lesson, or at the end of this lesson, you will be able to discuss tourism in detail. So firstly, with tourism, it will allow you to define the tourism concept. After that, the lesson will also equip you to be able to list and explain or discuss or briefly discuss different types of tourism. It will also allow you to discuss the classification of tourism in brief. And then the lesson will also allow you to discuss in detail benefits of tourism, and also it will allow you to discuss in detail effects of tourism. Remember, each lesson is accompanied by its worksheet that should be received. As you are watching this lesson, there's also the worksheet that's available for you, which is a version of memo and question paper, and questions. The second part of the lesson will be on environmental sustainability, where we'll be discussing briefly the state of the environment, defining environmental sustainability, talking about the state of the environment, which include the likes of types of pollution, erosion, deforestation, desertification, climate change. We'll also briefly discuss conservation as well as preservation. We'll also go further to discuss the market, on why does the market fail to sustain or to protect the environment. The lesson will go further to discuss state intervention to ensure sustainable development. And then we'll also discuss international problems to environmental sustainability together with international agreements. Our lesson will end in there. But for now, the focus area is on tourism. So the question is, why are we even doing tourism as a topic in economics? Remember that tourism activities have a certain contribution to economic activities. They contribute directly and indirectly into economic activities. So it is important for us to show you how the tourism industry contributes on building South African economy, the positive impact of tourism. So we are discussing this topic based on that, because tourism does have an effect in South African economy. It contributes a lot in the growth of the economy of the country. And then also you ask yourself, why are we doing this topic by the name of environmental sustainability? Remember, it is very important for you to be aware of the importance of the clean and safe environment. It is very important for each one of us to take care of the environment so that all natural resources, or all resources, both renewable and non-renewable, can remain intact or at the present value even for future generation. What is the emphasis? The main aim is to ensure that the future generation is able to achieve same benefits that are achieved by the current generation from the environment. So if we don't take care of the environment, if we don't use the environment in a sustainable manner, that will have a bad impact, because some of the renewable, some of the resources are endangered, are in danger of extinction. They can be completed if ever they are not used in a sustainable manner. As much as some of the resources are renewable, but they need to be used in a manner that will allow them to last longer. Because if we overconsume them in a short period of time, it takes time for them to be recovered. So it is very important for us to understand now the importance of using environment and natural resources in a manner that allow them to last for the longer period of time, in a manner that is sustainable, that does not compromise the present stage and the present value of the environment. We want all all resources and the environment to remain intact, to remain habitat, to remain alive, even for future generation. Because if these resources can be lost now, some of them will never be recovered because they are extinct. If ever a resource is extinct, that simply tells you that that resource, if it can be lost, it can never be recovered again. It will be hit that South Africa once had such resource in the environment. So it should be taken care of so that it will last even for longer. Also, it is important for you to know that the market as the private sector has a certain contribution on the environmental failures. It contributes on damaging or degrading the environment. Remember, environment depends on us to take care of it and protect it from harm. So if ever environment is not used in a sustainable manner, it can be damaged, can be degraded, it will lose its present value, which will cause some bad effects into the entire ecosystem. So it is very important for one to take care or to be fully informed about taking care of both the renewable and non-renewable resources within the economy and the environment. So if the market can play its part in protecting the environment, that can help to ensure that environment is not highly damaged, environment is maintained, environment is used in a manner that will allow it to do what? To even remain intact even for future generation. So the market is the one that damages the environment in most cases because of the production. Remember, the market takes time to adapt to the new technology. The market delays adapting the latest technology that is a part of green energy, that is a part of green technology to create the green economy. It delays because remember, having to adapt to the green economy will be cost effective. So for them to ensure they keep up with their profit that they've targeted, they delay adapting to the new technology. That's why they use machines that sometimes are burning fossil fuels, which are not eco or environmental friendly. Those machines are degrading the present value of the environment. Remember, the market also sees the environment as a common resource to create wealth. So if that is the situation, the market will always try to ensure that it achieves its profit that has been planned or that has been targeted. So by doing so, as they produce more goods and services to reap much profit, they compromise the present state of the environment, at the benefit of them getting the profit. So having to sustain the environment requires one to compromise. There should be a compromise. For businesses to achieve their profits and also to sustain the environment, they must compromise their profit. They cannot do it at the same time. Once they are willing to sustain the environment, they need to compromise their profit. So there is a challenge in there. Then the government tries to intervene now to solve the issue of environmental insustainability by bringing on board some measures to be taken by itself to ensure that environment is taken care of. How do we go about that? The state intervenes by granting property rights. So remember, the property right is all about licensing. Licenses issued by the government to individuals and businesses to take care of the environment. The belief is people or individuals and businesses will always take care of what belongs to them. So it will always be important and ideal for the government to provide or to issue property rights so that people and businesses can be able to take care of what belongs to them. In case they don't do such while they have what we call licenses or property rights, they can be charged or fined by the government so that they can protect the environment. We talk about intervening by issuing marketable permits. Remember, the government also allows people or businesses to cause pollution to a certain degree. That's where licensing comes in. It allows businesses to do what? To cause the pollution to a certain degree. Who issues these marketable permits? It is the Department of Minerals and Energy in South Africa. That department is responsible to issue marketable permits which are regarded to be licenses that allow businesses to cause pollution to a certain degree. So if ever a certain business is owning more permits than the level of pollution it is causing, it has a right to sell those permits to other businesses that are having less marketable permits. Then going back to correct something on the property rights, those are the entitlements that allows businesses and individuals to be the owners of the particular property. So having to own something, you will always take care of it. So that's a property right. It's an entitlement issued by the state to people or businesses as primary owners of the property. By doing so, the government is trying to encourage people to protect the environment because they always take care of what belongs to them according to the conservation. We talk about environmental taxes. The state intervened by imposing taxes on goods that are produced through pollution, on goods that are degrading the value of the environment as they are being produced. So the government intervened by doing what? By imposing environmental taxes to those businesses. Remember, by doing so, the cost of production for businesses become relatively high, and that will discourage them from doing what? From producing those goods and services. What does the government use with this taxation that is imposed? This tax is known as a curb tax or green tax because it is imposed on the greenhouse emissions or green gases or all kinds of pollution. The government will use that amount of revenues and to recover the negative externalities caused by businesses through pollution. And then we talk about providing or giving production subsidies or environmental subsidies, by the way. The state intervenes by issuing or giving environmental subsidies to businesses or individuals that are using green energy or that are protecting the environment, like when they are recycling or using the power-saving bulbs. That's a part of green energy. They will be given environmental subsidies so that they will continue taking care of the environment. The state also intervenes by implementing charges or levies for the use of the environment. So for people, as they use environment through by dumping the used material, the government intervened by imposing some fines on them that are paid in a monthly basis on local authorities' offices. And then the state also intervenes through education. That's when the government tries to partner with education department to attach the part of the curriculum based on environmental sustainability to the curriculum so that people can always be informed about the importance of taking care of the environment. Then recycling is a part of the process also whereby people are encouraged, also businesses are encouraged to reuse the used material so that there will be less dumping being disposed into the environment. So those are part of the state intervention. Then we talk about the international problems where we refer to the loss of biodiversity. That's when we refer to a situation whereby some of the species are lost forever. Some of the species are lost within the environment that we have been interacting with. So if those species can be lost forever, they will never be recovered. So remember, there are some species that are regarded to be endangered, meaning if they can be overconsumed, they will be completed. They will never be recovered again. So there's an issue of the loss of biodiversity within the world, whereby some species are lost and they are not recovered easily because some of them are non-renewable. And then we talk about also chemical waste. In this situation, we refer to the kind of waste that is believed to be very harmful to living things. To what we call environment, animals, and plants. So those chemicals, we refer to the disposal of chemicals into the environment, running water, etc. That are always dangerous if ever human lives, animals, and plants are in touch or interacting with that. It can even lead to what we call the infertility. And then we talk about the likes of hazardous waste. That is regarded to be a very much harmful or dangerous wasted material into the environment that takes time to decompose. In that situation, we call that kind of waste a radioactive material. It lasts for a longer period of time, doesn't decompose easily. E.g., whenever one is wasting cardboards, throwing cardboards into the environment, disposing bottles and also plastic into the environment, though that material will always take time to decompose in the environment. So it degrades the state of the environment. And then we also talk about the loss of indigenous knowledge. So we know that we are faced by the issue of using modern technology that has resulted to the loss of indigenous knowledge. So if the indigenous knowledge can be lost, that knowledge will never be recovered because this is the kind of knowledge that is transferred from a person to person or from one generation to another. So it is very important to treasure this kind of the knowledge because it is not having bad effects into the environment, but instead it is sustainable. But then lately, it is no longer used because of because of the fourth industrial revolution, whereby we are now using artificial knowledge, as well as we are using what we call machines that are burning fossil fuels instead of having that knowledge that was a priority to safeguard the environment while resulting to high level of productivity. And then we talk about the climate change. So in there, remember, this is known to be unpredictable change in weather patterns. So if ever we're faced by the issue of the climate change, that will have a bad effect on the harvest, bad effect on the environment itself, because that changes weather patterns in a bad way, in such a way that people will be affected, animals will be affected, the entire environment will be affected. And then we'll talk about also international agreements where we refer to the Rio. So it's been improving from Rio 5 up to the current one. Also Stockholm Conference, we talk about also Rio de Janeiro, we talk about Johannesburg Summit, etc. Those will be explained during the course of this lesson. So here we are dealing with the tourism. Remember, tourism occurs when individuals travel from their usual places to unusual places for different reasons for the period of not more than 1 year. So it is important for you to know that for us to regard an activity as tourism, someone needs to travel from the usual place to unusual place for the period of not more than a year. If it's more than a year, it's no longer regarded as tourism. Also, at the same time, the tourism the activity can be seen as tourism if ever that tour or that traveling does not include one having to receive income or remuneration. Also, there must be a reason for that particular traveling or tourism for it to be regarded as tourism. One must spend at least 1 night on that particular trip. At the same time, it should not be less than 160 kilometers traveling for that activity to be seen as tourism. So we know that the tourism industry is one of the fastest to grow in the economy. It is growing rapidly and faster because of some different reasons, such as there have been improvement in marketing. So with the marketing being in place and advertising, tourism is increasing. There are variety of attractions that have been developed in the country, especially in South Africa, that will always attract people to tour to the country. At the same time, there is a high level of disposable income earned by people that allow them to have their own leisure time that they can spend. People are also working for short hours, which give them enough time to travel and see the beauty of the world. So there are some different reasons for the growth of tourism industry in the country, which contribute the most also in South African economy. So tourism become a source of income for household, businesses, and the government. How does it happen? So for the household, remember that households are able to start businesses under informal sector and formal sector because of tourism activities. For instance, if ever in the area there is a certain attraction, there will always be people moving around to enjoy themselves in that particular attraction. So people of the area, they can become business people or entrepreneurs under formal or informal sector, whereby they will be selling some of their skills into tourists so that they can earn income. So that will be creating jobs. Also, if there are some attractions around the area, some people can be employed as tour guards in there. Remember, tourism is labor intensive. It employs mostly human resource than employing machinery. So it creates most of the job for the household, direct and indirect. That will be discussed in detail. Businesses. For businesses, they get an opportunity to grow because of increasing number of tourists in the area. They get that chance to sell their goods, and their goods can be known internationally, which will be improving their brands locally and abroad. The government is also earning a lot from tourism industry, because as people are traveling into the country or into the province, the government will be earning tax revenues, because as they spend on goods and services in those areas, they are taxed. As they buy tickets, they are taxed. So that simply gave the government extra revenues. So if ever tourists are from other world countries, that benefit the government the most, because we will be able to earn the foreign currency and also taxable income. Those people are taxable as they buy flight tickets, as they come into our attractions such as game reserve, they buy tickets that are also taxed. So the government will be able to receive revenues because of the tourism. So we have seen the highest level of growth in tourism industry in 2010, where we had a big international event during the 2010 Soccer World Cup. There were so many tourists touring into the country to observe the beauty of the game. So for that sake, we had many tourists coming into the country. So that benefited South African economy the most, because that had led to the improvement of the infrastructure. The same infrastructure was able to benefit local people until today, because it was not removed after the World Cup. It remained to benefit the local people. So that infrastructure also allows people to create their own job opportunities, to be self-employed and employ even other people within the economy. So international events also contribute the most in the growth of international tourism. Remember, if we talk about international tourism, we refer to the situation whereby people travel from their own countries to South Africa, and South Africans are also leaving the country to the foreign countries. That is regarded to be international tourism. So with the international events, that will always lead to the increased number of people traveling into the country. And that will also have an effect on the country's currency. And then, so an activity will be seen as a tourism if it fits in the following criteria. Number one, if ever the activity is regarded as tourism, there must be a purpose or the reason for that particular tour. So one have to travel to the area for the particular reason. That will ensure that that kind of traveling is a part of tourism. Also, there must be no remuneration or income expected by the person traveling. So if one is leaving the usual place to unusual place, must not be expecting any income or remuneration, then we can say that's a part of tourism. Also, the minimum length stay of at least 1 night. One have to spend a night on that traveling, and then we can say that's a part of tourism. And then also, maximum stay must not be more than 1 year. So if one is traveling, must not spend more than a year on that particular tour, then you can say that's a part of tourism. And then the traveling distance must be more than 160 kilometers, must not be below 160 kilometers. These are very important for you to know in case you are being questioned in your examination paper to say, mention any criteria that is needed for activity to be seen as tourism. You must be able to mention them all to say there must be a reason for the traveling, there must be no expectation of income, the stay must be a minimum of 1 night, and then must not be more than a period of 1 year, and then the traveling distance must not be lower than 160 kilometers, must be above 160 kilometers. And then we have different types of tourism, which is leisure or recreation tourism. But this is a kind of tourism that occurs when people travel from their usual places to unusual places just to relax for relaxation. And then also we talk about cultural tourism. This is a kind of tourism that occurs when people travel from their usual places to unusual places just to observe the beauty of cultural diversity in a particular area or particular country. Ecotourism. This is a kind of tourism that occurs when people travel from their usual places to unusual places to observe the beauty of nature. Business or professional tourism. This is the kind of tourism that occurs when people travel from their usual places to unusual places for business purposes. Adventure tourism. This one occurs when tourists travel from their usual places to unusual places for like mountain hiking, etc. And then ballet tourism. This is the kind of tourism that occurs when people travel from their usual places to unusual places based on the ecological system. When they travel to those areas that are very much unique, that are not, easily found in the country or the continent. So that is regarded to be part of ballet tourism. And then other types of tourism will include business, educational tourism, the health, etc., where people are traveling to the particular area for the sake of education. Some are traveling for the sake of medication or for the sake of health. Those are other types of tourism. And then from here we classify tourism because tourism activities are grouped. So it depends. If you talk to the particular area, we have a power to classify that kind of traveling for you to say, are you traveling domestically? Is it an inbound or outbound? Is it internal or international? So for the domestic tourism, so this one occurs when people are traveling within their own regions. So that is regarded to be a domestic tourism. If you travel within your own region, meeting all of these 5 items that are the part of the criteria for the activity to business tourism, we can say that's a domestic tourism. Inbound tourism, in this case, we refer to the traveling that occurs when people leave their countries to South Africa, that can be seen as an inbound tourism because they are coming into the country. And then outbound tourism, this one occurs when domestic people or people within South Africa travel beyond South African borders for different reasons. That's an outbound tourism. That simply means that both inbound and outbound are creating international tourism, which occurs when people are traveling beyond South African borders, while foreign people are traveling to South African borders. And then the internal tourism. This one occurs when people are traveling from within the country, across provinces within the country. That is regarded as internal tourism. So international has been explained, which occurs when people travel across borders of the country for the different reasons. Here it is explained now in the classification. Domestic tourism, tourists travel within their regions. So people are moving within their own regions, not beyond their provinces. So if you tour domestically, you tour within your regions, you are not escaping or jumping to another province. That is regarded to be a domestic tourism. Inbound, foreign tourists who visit South Africa for different reasons. Outbound, South African people visit foreign countries for different reasons. Internal tourism, South Africans tour within the country across all 9 provinces. And then international tourism, South African people tour outside the country while foreign tourists visit South Africa for different reasons. We regard this as a classification of tourism. It is not a type of tourism. So how do we measure tourism? So firstly, quantitative statistics such as number of arrivals and overnight stay are used to indicate the scope and the growth of tourism industry. And then the following key indicators that are used to measure the level of tourism. We talk about the volume. If we talk of the volume, we refer to incidence of domestic travel and how many trips are taken to different destinations. And then we talk about the value. In this case, we refer to the amount of money spent by domestic tourists as they travel within their own regions. Number of bed nights. In this situation, we refer to number of nights spent in various establishments by tourists. And then provincial distribution. In this situation, we refer to the distribution of volume, value, and bed nights between 9 provinces. So that simply tells you that the provincial distribution talk about the volume, talk about the value, talk about the number of bed nights, meaning we refer to what you call number of trips, and then we will refer to what we call number of nights spent, and then we also refer to what we call volume, the value, as well as what we call the amount spent on that particular tour. So that's a provincial distribution. It is across all 9 provinces. Seasonality. In this situation, we refer to the time of the year that people use to travel. So which time that people normally use for traveling from their usual places to unusual places. So that's the seasonality. So these are what we call, there are 5 forms of criteria that is used to measure the tourism. And then why in South Africa we have the highly growing tourism industry? So we have different reasons for the growth in tourism industry in South Africa. Number one, the tourism industry is growing faster because of political climate. In South Africa, we are living under democracy. So people are free to travel from any place to any place for different reasons. There are no demarcations. So in this situation, that has allowed tourism to grow because people are living within the freedom of traveling from one place to another without any restrictions. Number two, the increase in disposable income has resulted to people having to be able to travel from their usual places to unusual places because they want to enjoy themselves. Also, the improvement of the infrastructure. Infrastructure is a key factor for the tourism to occur because without availability of infrastructure, tourism will be dented. Tourism will not be able to grow. So with the infrastructure and superstructure being available, remember, if I talk about the infrastructure, I refer to facilities that are important to support economic activities. If I talk about the superstructure, I refer to establishments by the private sector, such as hotels, B&Bs, as well as other attractions that have been developed by the private sector to improve the industry of tourism. So the improvement of the infrastructure and superstructure is one of the reasons for the growth in tourism industry in South Africa. So disposable income has been spoken about. Also, the democracy, which is the good political climate, has been also explained to say with the democracy, people find themselves being free to travel from any place. Marketing, the improvement in marketing has resulted to the growth in tourism, because now there's a marketing across where our local destinations or attractions are marketed and advertised to ensure that people are able to recognize them. And if ever they find them being attractive, they simply tour to the country. Remember that South Africa is the gateway to Africa. Most of foreign countries and foreign tourists are always willing to tour to South Africa. As they tour South Africa, they use South Africa as the gateway so that they can be able to visit other world countries within Africa. Also, our currency is accessible. Our currency is not that strong. It is vulnerable in the foreign market. So that makes it easy for foreign tourists to tour to South Africa. So the accessibility of the currency make it more easier for tourists to tour to the country. And then also a variety of attractions that have been established will always attract so many tourists to visit the country. So here are the reasons. Increasing disposable income. People are earning a lot of income, so that allows them to have surplus income that can be used for relaxation and tourism. And then reduction in working hours. Some people are working for less hours with more income being earned. That allows them to do what? To visit unusual places for relaxation. Improve political climate, like I mentioned, to say, with the politics being highly improved in South Africa, that has resulted to the improvement of tourism industry in South Africa. Increase in economic activities. So there are variety of establishments that have been established or created in South Africa, which result to the growth in tourism industry. Improvement of transport facilities and infrastructure. That has led to having people finding it easy to travel from their regions to other provinces, and then also across the country and to other regions. That is the reason of the growth or improvement of the infrastructure. Also, foreign tourists find it easy to visit South Africa because of the improvement in transport facilities and the infrastructure. Development of communication and technology. So technology has made things more easier for people to even see attractions across the world that take less than a minute for one to just research and discover a particular attraction, so that they can be able to travel to that particular area. So the improvement of technology and communication has led to the effective growth in tourism industry in South Africa and the entire world. At last, we talk about advertising and promotion. There's a high level of advertising that is done through technology, allowing people to be able to observe a variety of things that are attractive for them to leave their usual places to unusual places for different reasons. And then we talk about effects of tourism. Here we go. So we talk about GDP. Remember, GDP refers to the total value of all final goods and services produced within the country at a given period of time, usually a year. So tourism contributes positive to the GDP, because as we have tourism activities, there will be high level of economic activities within the country. There will be firms or business being established because of tourism industry. Remember, tourism is a service sector, so it creates most of the opportunities within the service sector, allowing people to earn income and increase economic activities. So with the GDP, businesses will be established, and then as businesses are established, there will be the demand for labor, and there will be high level of productivity being produced by businesses, and they have to supply tourists that are visiting those particular areas. Also, it contributes to employment both directly and indirectly. Some people are employed in the tourism industry directly. To say people, if they're employed as tour guides, that means those people are employed directly under tourism industry. So if people are employed maybe under hotel establishments because of the attractions available in the area, that's an indirect employment caused by the improvement of tourism industry. Poverty, people are able to start their own businesses. People are able to also to get jobs and perform their duties to earn income that will be alleviating poverty in the area. Externalities, they are divided into both the negative and the positive externalities. We know that tourism contributes positively to the economy under externalities, because that will lead to infrastructural development, it will lead to job creation, improve or increase disposable income, and also improve living standard, also lowering poverty. Those are positive externalities. It will also allow people to earn skills that can be used even in the future. But negatively, we know that tourists, as they tour to the area, they leave their carbon footprint, which can be part of littering. And then also, we know that as more people are visiting the area, that will cause environmental stress. And people, as they visit one area, they cause the congestion. If ever there's a congestion for vehicles, they are all burning fossil fuels, which will cause environmental damages, because as that pollution or greenhouse gases are being disposed through cars, that will lead to what? Environmental degradation, and that can crack the ozone layer and damage ecosystem. And then also the bad thing is that as tourism is increasing in the area, people of the area will find themselves facing the issue of an inflation, because businesses get an interest to increase prices for tourists, only to find that even local people that are around the area will be affected, because they have to buy those goods at the higher cost than in the normal market. And then also to the environment is more the same, because tourism is more the same as negative externalities negatively, because tourism have a bad effect into the environment. It results to the shift of the landscape. Since we try to improve the superstructure and the infrastructure, it results to the degradation of the environment, because as tourists are visiting the area, they congest the area and cause environmental stress. And also, as people visit to the area of the particular environment, they leave their carbon footprint, they pollute the area. That is bad. So also we talk about investment. Tourism has a good effect on the investment, because it results to the improvement of the investment in the form of the infrastructure, establishment of businesses, etc. So those are some effects of tourism. Remember, this is an essay, it's a part of section C. You can come across this question from the lower order, where you mention any two or one effect of tourism, and then also where you have to define externalities or briefly discuss externalities and caused by tourism. So for 8 marks, and then also maybe evaluating the effect of tourism on the environment, evaluating the effect of tourism in the investment, and then how does tourism affect poverty and employment? How does tourism affect the GDP? So those are 8 marks questions that you must be able to answer in this situation, or else it can be the 26 marks or 40 marks basically under an essay, where you discuss in detail for 26 marks effects of tourism. So here they come being discussed in details. So tourism has various effects economically, socially, and environmentally. We know that tourism contributes to economy positively, and then tourism contributes to the society in a certain manner. It can be negative and positive. It also contributes to the environment, mostly negatively, and also positively. How positively? If ever tourism activities are in the place, there are some attractions like game reserves and nature reserves. The environment will be taken care of so that it remains beautiful for tourists to come and observe their beauty. That contribute positively, because they try to sustain the environment for the sake of tourists. So it has a good contribution or positive contribution to the environment. Also negative, like I mentioned, to say they will be littering, as people will be leaving their carbon footprint. If ever there's sometimes like the hunting that is taking place in that particular area, that will be resulting to some of the species being lost because of illegal hunting. That also is a part of socially, tourism will be improving social welfare because of the improvement of the infrastructure, improvement of job creation, and also poverty alleviation. Economically, there are more establishments that are created because of tourism industry. And then it increased the increase in tourism activities affect the economic side and the environment itself in different way. Like I've explained, tourism is the industry which is believed to be having the most positive effect. However, it does have some negative effect that has been explained, especially under the environment. Also, under local people finding themselves being charged higher prices than expected, because the area is mostly tourism destination. So businesses want to receive abnormal profits. It has a positive impact to the GDP, poverty relief, employment creation, infrastructure development, increasing investment, and the biodiversity. So tourism does affect all of these components that have been mentioned. So how does tourism affect the gross domestic product or GDP? So tourism has the biggest impact on the services industry. So remember, it is a part of most services sector, because most services are offered under tourism industry. And then indirect contribution. Tourism is a service-based industry. It is responsible for 65% of the GDP in developed economies and 40% of GDP in developing countries. So it has a certain contribution. So direct contribution, tourism contributes 7.9% GDP in South Africa compared to 12% worldwide, meaning South Africa is highly dependent on tourism activities for the GDP to grow in the country. So the tourism industry impact more on services industry than on agriculture or manufacturing. On the agriculture and manufacturing, it is involved indirectly because there should be harvest that should be made available for tourists. That's an indirect. There should be manufacturing of goods and services taking place, or if goods are produced, they can also be used to supply for tourists. So that's an indirect. Although there are some upstream effect. For example, agriculture provides food to restaurants and manufacturing provides vehicles for transport. So tourism therefore affects GDP both directly and indirectly. So we continue with the contribution. So indirect contribution. So with the tourism is service-based industry and has been partly responsible for service sector growth in South Africa over recent years. We know that service sector is increasing or improving in South Africa. The tourism industry is a part of that particular growth. In developing economies or countries, the sector is responsible for 40% growth, while in developed countries, it is responsible for 65% growth in the GDP. So in South Africa, it is similar to that developed countries. Services contributed more than 67% in 2011 under the tourism industry. And then we continue, direct distribution or contribution. So to really plan for the economic development of the tourism sector, it is important to know the amount of total direct contribution to the economy. And instead, they show that in 2010, inbound tourists contributed 69 billion and domestic tourists contributed 99 billion, amounting to 168 billion. So that means there's a huge contribution by tourism industry in South Africa. This is about 3% of South African GDP. If the indirect contribution is added, tourism adds about 7% in the country's GDP. So it contributes positive to the GDP. How does tourism affect employment? So tourism employs about 7% of South Africa's workforce, approximately 1.12 million people. Remember, this happens both in a form of direct way or indirect. So it will be explained. Tourism is the largest provider of jobs because, so let's check. Remember that tourism creates jobs in two ways. It can be direct and indirect. So people can be self-employed under informal sector. People can be self-employed under formal sector. People can also be employed under tourism industry directly. And then also people can be employed indirect under tourism industry as they work in hotels and B&Bs as well as restaurants that are within tourism destinations. So tourism is labor intensive. Remember, if we say it's labor intensive, that means it employs most of the workforce than employing machines or technology. Employs various of skills, which include skilled labor, semi-skilled labor, and non-skilled labor. Mostly, people get skills while they are already working. They are employed and trained on duty to become effective. Not that much skill is required before they get there, but also there's a demand for skill in the under tourism industry. Under various kinds of skill, we talk about the tourist guides and then hotel staff or those that are working in restaurants. Those people will be employed because maybe of the improvement in tourism in the country. Provides immediate employment. People are employed sometimes immediately to be the part of the workforce or to be a part of labor force that is active and working. So if ever there's a particular event in the area, people will be employed like directly and immediately to go and work. So that simply means it provides an immediate employment at times, provide entrepreneurial opportunities. Because of the tourism activities improving in the area, if there are some tourism destinations, people can establish or start their own either formal or informal businesses, like being street vendors next to the stadium. That's also a part of entrepreneurial opportunities because those people find it being a source of living as they sell their goods and services around the tourism destinations. And then tourism is the largest earner of foreign exchange because, so remember, foreign tourists visit South Africa. As they visit South Africa, they will have to exchange their domestic currencies to South African rand so that they will be able to access South Africa. So for that reason, we earn the foreign currency. So foreign tourists play pay for services in the foreign exchange. They don't pay using our currency. They have to sell their currency to buy South African currency. Then South Africa will be receiving the foreign exchange rate, so that we earn the foreign currency. Foreign tourists usually spend more than local tourists. Whenever they tour to the country, they spend more because there are some of those goods and services that they've been longing to come and enjoy or observe or buy in South Africa. That's why I mentioned that local businesses get an opportunity to have their goods being well known in the international market because of foreign tourists that visit the country. How does it contribute to poverty? We know that poverty is most evident in rural areas due to lack of job opportunities. So we also know that most of tourism attractions are located in rural areas. So tourism can alleviate or ease poverty in the following ways. Most of attractions for tourism, like game reserves, nature reserves, they are in rural areas, which means it can alleviate poverty in those areas because the improvement of tourism industry will mean people of the area are able to produce their craft work and sell them to tourists or to the local markets. Tourism is a fast and effective mechanism for distributing resources to rural areas to develop them as tourist sites. Like I'm talking about game reserves and nature reserves. They are mostly located in rural areas, which result to tourism industry growing and having people earning the income because of those attractions being established in those areas. Many prime tourist attractions are located in rural areas or rural communities that alleviate poverty in those areas. Tourist developments in rural areas increase the number of available jobs in areas where there are not many jobs. So jobs are created for people of the area, so they get to be employed, which prevent them from moving to urban areas as a part of urbanization. So the question you can come across here, it can be, how does tourism positively affect poverty? Or else, how does tourism affect urbanization? Remember, the improvement in tourism attractions in rural areas will result to the increase in job opportunities for rural people, which will lead to less urbanization. So tourism also promotes balanced, sustainable form of development. So if ever there's a tourism attraction in the particular rural area, there will be improvement of the infrastructure and superstructure, and that will be leading to the development that will be balanced between rural and urban areas. So people are able to earn living in their home areas, resulting to the reduction of urbanization and more balanced population distribution. Like I've mentioned, there will be less urbanization because of the improvement of tourism activities in rural areas, because it will be creating job opportunities for rural people to earn income and earn living. We continue with poverty. It allows rural people to share in the benefits of tourism, promoting more balanced, sustainable form of development. Remember, I've mentioned that there will be improvement of the infrastructure and superstructure. So there will be a development in rural communities, and people will be able to earn income and earn a better living. Tourism provides an alternative to urbanization, so that allows people to settle in their own areas and earn income instead of going to urban areas, permitting people to continue a rural family lifestyle, empowering both women and youth, as they will be able to establish businesses around those tourism attractions. They will be able to be employed and live in. So tourism offers opportunities to diversify sources of income for poor people. People cannot only depend on being employed. So people of the area can also depend on establishing their own informal or formal businesses so that they will earn living. Hence, we are saying it diversifies sources of income. People don't mainly depend on being employed, but they can also be self-employed and be as business owners within the area so that they earn income and alleviate poverty. It allows them to have a stake. So they start and operate small-scale tourism businesses around community assets such as forests, parks, and rivers to establish small, micro, and medium enterprises to provide services, retail, transport, and accommodation. So they allow people of rural areas or people of the area to have a stake. They have something to benefit from tourism activities if ever they are surrounded by tourism attractions, and then empowering them. It extends opportunities of an on job and other training to local people, people will be able to be trained on the job while they're already employed. So they will be empowered because a variety of skills are needed under tourism industry. So people can be employed being non-skilled or semi-skilled. When they get there, they will be trained to become effective under tourism industry. Creating partnerships. So we know that it links up with the mainstream tourism businesses supplying goods and services. So local people find themselves being able to link up with the formal businesses around the area as they supply them with their own self-production so that they can be supplied to tourists. So that create partnerships between people of the area and businesses within the area. Also between the government and the private sector, since there will be formation of public-private partnerships. And then externalities. Remember, if we talk of externalities, we refer to benefits and charges that spill over to the third party, the way we explained under the market failure. So the tourism industry can have both the negative and positive externalities within the economy and the environment. So externalities can be defined as cost or benefit that arise from economic activities that are not reflected on the actual prices of transactions. So while tourism attracts large amount of revenue, it can also cause overdue environmental damage. They can harm, or that can harm the very foundation on which it depends. So, like I mentioned before, to say with the good effect as positive externalities through job creation, poverty alleviation, improvement of the infrastructure, improved GDP, it can also have environmental damage. Rapid growth in tourism aiming to short-term benefits usually result in more negative than positive externalities. And then these include the degeneration of traditions and the cultural values, and the environmental damage to sites and natural areas. And then we continue, we go to the positive externalities. So we know that it attracts large amount of revenues. The businesses and the state are able to receive more revenues because of high volume of tourists touring into the area or to the country. It leads to the improvement of infrastructure development. We know that infrastructure is very much critical for tourism activities to occur. We need to have infrastructure in both energy, the transport, and communication. We must have that kind of the infrastructure so that tourism activities can improve in the particular area or by the particular country. For instance, tourists that are visiting the country or the area, they must have access to transport facilities so that they can be able to travel from one place to another. They must also have access to what we call the energy. There must be energy being saved or being provided by the state into the area. There must be electricity. There must be fuel available for them to be able to travel from one point to another. So also, it is very important for the tourism industry to improve. There must be communication. Communication cables must be there, must be installed for people to be able to communicate with their own families as they are far away from them. So it is very important. So infrastructure is a very critical part of tourism industry, because without infrastructure, tourism industry cannot grow easily. Remember, we are involved in social media the most. So if there is no networking within the area or network within the area, we cannot be able to be live and share what we call the current situations when we are visiting particular destinations with our friends and families. So with communication facilities being there, it is more easier for people to be able to communicate effectively. So it also stimulates employment in direct and also direct. So can help conserve cultural and natural assets. So we know that with tourism activities being in place, there can be conservation and preservation of natural resources can be conserved. And also our cultures and history is preserved, or they are preserved, so that as tourists come to observe those cultures and history, will be able to enjoy and understand the actual life lived by indigenous South Africans. So for that sake, that contribute really positively to the what you call tourism industry. So it can result to the conservation of natural resources and other resources, can result to the conservation of cultures, can result to the preservation of our history. It can be taken care of. That's why you have some museums for the history that are keeping our history alive, so that what we call tourists can be able to learn more and more about our treasure as our history as South Africans. Alleviate poverty, but needs to be carefully planned. Negative externalities. Tourism can cause environmental damage if not managed correctly. So tourism can result in a lot of waste and damage to sensitive tourist sites. Remember, with the increased number of people visiting the area, there will be lot of waste being disposed into the area, which is bad for that particular environment. It can also the infrastructure at tourist sites can come under pressure to cater for increased tourist numbers. If ever there are more tourists being congested in the area, infrastructure can be under stress also. Tourism can lead to increased prices for local people, like I mentioned. Local people find themselves being forced to pay more prices for goods that are relatively cheap in the sites where there are no tourism attractions. And then we continue. Environment. How does tourism affect the environment? It can create environmental stress and can result in permanent restructuring of the landscape, e.g. construction when they work by creating highways and improving infrastructure that can lead to the shape of the landscape. Also, additional waste products. So the waste can increase, like sewage and non-biological littered waste can affect environment in the negative way because of the increase in tourism activities. Direct environmental stress, the loss of wildlife species due to safari and hunting. Remember, there is some illegal hunting that are in place where they overconsume some animal lives. That will lead to the loss of biodiversity. Effect on population dynamics, e.g. migration and changes in the population density in response to the needs of tourist sites. And then how does it affect the investment? So we continue. Tourist destinations require adequate physical hotel rooms, economic ATMs, and the basic water and electricity provision, services infrastructure. This includes the likes of transport infrastructure. It must be available. So improved roads are needed to access tourist sites from so that people can be able to be involved in transit tourism. There must be improved transport infrastructure for transit tourists to take place. And then communication infrastructure, e.g. hotels need telephone lines to take bookings at the tourist sites. And then energy infrastructure, tourists need electricity at tourist sites. And then basic services, there should be clean water, refuse removal, etc. Even sanitation must be there so that we can have effective tourism industry. That is a part of the investment on the infrastructure and the superstructure. And then we continue. Now, benefits of tourism. So we are checking now the benefits of tourism on the likes of households. How does tourism affect households? We know that tourism is labor intensive. It employs most of the workforce or human resource than employing machines. That will benefit households to earn income for living. Households get direct jobs through tourism in hotel and accommodation, infrastructure development projects such as EPWP, self-employment and tour guides, etc. They get to be employed under tourism industry. This generates income for households and contribute positively to the increase in aggregate demand. And then we continue with the benefits of tourism. A household continues. Most of the infrastructure created for tourists is available for households or local people to use. These include roads, hotels, stadiums, etc. So the infrastructure, like I mentioned before, that is created for tourists can also benefit local people because as the particular project is ending or the particular event is ending, local people will benefit from enjoying themselves in that particular available infrastructure. Tourism is a great mechanism for skill development. People tend to be skilled as tourism activities are improving in the area as they will get to be employed in different sectors within the tourism industry. It requires variety of skills for which education and training is needed. And then local people acquire a variety of skills which include entrepreneurial skills, conservation and preservation skills, martial or tour guide skills, etc. And then income earned by household in tourism industry reduces the level of poverty and improve standards of living for the household. So tourism becomes a source of income for the household. We continue. Under tourism, benefits of tourism for businesses. How do they benefit? Remember that tourists spend directly to businesses. That results to business having to receive more revenues or more income, which improve their profits because of tourism attraction or tourism activities in the area. Infrastructure becomes a critical facilities to benefit both local and foreign businesses. The improvement of the infrastructure for tourism activities benefit businesses also within the area because infrastructure is very important for businesses to be effective. For instance, we talk about communication, transport, and energy infrastructure. Superstructure consists of businesses that provide accommodation, transport, be it attraction, retailing, and recreation services. So this superstructure becomes a source of profit for businesses. If ever businesses are creating or establishing hotels and accommodations, that is a source of income for businesses. Businesses benefit through public-private partnership, which brings them a great opportunity to expand their operations. Remember, with the tourism industry taking place or tourism activities taking place, businesses will be able to partner with the government, which will allow them to expand their business as more revenues will be received from the triple Ps, which are public-private partnerships. And then public sector provides a range of financial incentive to private sector tourism investment, which include subsidies, loans, as well as tax concessions or tax exemptions. We continue with the benefits of tourism on businesses. So tourism stimulates all the business environment and helps achieve certain socio-economic objectives such as development of entrepreneurs, triple BE, and small, micro, and medium enterprise development. They can be able to grow because of the tourism activity taking part in the area. Tourism also offers entrepreneurial opportunities in the formal sector as well as informal sector. People get an opportunity to establish their own informal business to earn living. So they're able to also become entrepreneurs under informal sector. Local products are well marketed international since South Africa has become a popular tourism destination for foreign tourists. So our local goods can be well known abroad because of the tourism industry. So our goods produced by local businesses under manufacturing sector will be well known in the international market because of the tourism industry. So the direct spending by tourists is a great motive to businesses to produce more, and this increases their profit that they earn as local businesses caused by the improvement of tourism activities in the area. Then how does the government benefit from tourism? We know that there will be increase in tax revenues received by the government because as tourists are touring into the area, they pay tax as they buy goods and services. They pay tax as they buy traveling tickets. So that alone increase what we call the revenues for the state. Levying taxes help the government to recover external costs and increase its revenues. Remember, taxes imposed by the government on people touring into that particular area will be used by the local authorities to recover the negative externalities that is incurred caused by that particular tourism activity. Tourism and the country the foreign currencies as foreign tourists pay in foreign currencies as they visit South Africa. Job created by tourism industry is both formal and informal sector. In both formal and informal sector, it reduces the burden on the government to make it easy to fulfill its full employment objective. Remember, the government is obliged to achieve full employment or create job opportunities for all economically active population. So with the tourism industry creating job opportunities, that also benefit the government because it can be able to achieve its objective, which is the full employment objective. So the industry also assists the government to achieve its two objectives basically of full employment as well as economic growth. The government can achieve economic growth because of the improvement of economic activities within the country. So it is important for you to be able to link economic concept under the tourism. Tourism serves as a motive to the government to increase infrastructural development. Remember, I mentioned that infrastructure is a key what we call component for tourism activities to occur. So the government will be improving infrastructure because of upcoming tourism activities that are some of them are internal or international events that will lead to the improvement of the infrastructure for the country. And also that infrastructure development will benefit the state to have a well-improved country in terms of the infrastructure. So tourism really serves as a motive for infrastructure or for the government to improve infrastructure of the area, which is known as a development. We continue the infrastructure. So adequate and well-maintained physical infrastructure is essential for tourism destinations. So remember, tourism destinations are dependent on the availability of the infrastructure for tourists to reach into those areas. So the government must intervene to provide infrastructure so that it will be easy for tourists to travel from one point to another. Also to enjoy their visiting into the country through having the communication facilities being there. The infrastructure is normally shared between residents and visitors. So local people will benefit from roads and communication cables installed, and also tourists will also benefit from that. And then the government has prioritized economic infrastructure, including elements such as harbors, beaches, lake access to promote growth in tourism industry. Most corridors have tourism as an important focus area. Public-private partnerships are often used for the development of the infrastructure. And then the indigenous knowledge. Remember, we talk about the knowledge that is too much embedded on the indigenous activities such as culture, etc. So indigenous knowledge is the local knowledge that is embedded on the culture and social norms of living. So it is transferred from one generation to another. And then also this knowledge that this is the knowledge that needs to be preserved as the treasure of the current and future generations, because if ever it is not preserved, it will be lost forever and can never be recovered. Indigenous knowledge system has been economically used in modern society. It has economic worth. That's why they will ask you, how does indigenous knowledge contribute on improving tourism activities or economic activities? It is very important for you to know such. And then culture, storytelling, food preparation, traditional medicine, and farming have a huge impact on South African tourism industry. The culture alone, people are able to travel from one province to another to observe the beauty of different cultures. People are able to travel from their country to South Africa to observe the beauty of the cultural diversity. And then also storytelling is the one of important part of tourism, because people travel into the country from different countries just to know our history, what happened, when did it happen. And then food preparation, we have unique food preparation for different cultures in South Africa that also attract foreign tourists to visit our own areas. Traditional medicine also is a part of tourism, because people visit their unusual areas just to obtain that medicine traditionally. So the what we call indigenous knowledge contribute positively to what we call to the tourism industry. And then we move now to environmental sustainability. We don't have enough time, but we'll try to cover everything. So the concept of environmental sustainability is it is the act of protecting or safeguarding the present value of the environment to ensure that it lasts for a longer period of time and it doesn't get to be depleted and it remains intact even for future generations. The unsustainable use of the environment has an effect of loss of biodiversity. Remember, if ever environment is not well used or well maintained, the biodiversity will be lost. Remember, if we talk of the biodiversity, we talk about the loss of species such as living and non-living things that we interact with. So some natural resources are non-renewables. They are in danger of extinction. We call them endangered species. If they are not used in a sustainable manner, they can be lost forever. So it is important for people and businesses to safeguard the environment and resources. Introduction of toxic substances into the environment result to pollution and create environmental stress. If ever one is disposing used material into the environment, that will be causing what we call the pollution into the environment and result to the environment not being in the same stage as before. It will be destructed. There will be environmental degradation. Chemical and hazardous waste as well as radioactive material have an effect of killing plants, animals, and human if wasted into land, water, and ecosystem. We know that if we talk about chemical waste, we refer to the disposal of chemicals into running water and to the grassland that will affect those that will be interacting with. For instance, if chemicals are wasted into running water, animals that are drinking that water will die. And then people that are drinking that water will die. And then plants that are irrigated through that running water will also die. So it has a bad effect. And then we move to the state of the environment. In this situation, we talk about different types of pollution, which include land pollution, where that occurs when used materials are disposed to the environment or grassland. And then water pollution, that occurs when material that has been used is disposed to running water or oceans or rivers. Of gases into the environment that will damage the ecosystem and the ozone layer. Remember the effect of air pollution. It can lead to what? It can lead to the global warming as well as the climate change, which will affect the entire environment. So we continue. So we come across erosion. Soil erosion, remember, is the removal of topsoil from the land and be moved away to the point that the area will find itself finding it very difficult for anything to grow in there. That's a soil erosion. Deforestation, we refer to the permanent destruction of forests or trees in a way that they will never grow again. That's a bad effect because remember, trees are very important for the welfare of animals as well as human beings. Desertification, that refers to a situation whereby the land become the desert to the point that very little can grow in that particular area. Climate change, we talk about unpredictable change in weather patterns that can occur in any time and affect the environment and affect also human lives and animal lives. Remember, if there is a climate change, there can be floods, there can be drought, there can be a hard wind that can threaten human lives, animal lives, and the entire environment. Then we move to the conservation. In this situation, you must know the definition for conservation. You must be able to briefly discuss conservation. You must be able to distinguish between conservation as well as preservation. So conservation refers to the sustainable use of and management of natural resources such as water, air, wildlife, and earth deposits. So conservation involves the official supervision of natural areas, including their vegetation, soil, animals, rivers, and other natural resources in order to protect them through wise management. So human activity causes pollution and overutilization of the environment. So conservation is necessary. It will ensure that we keep enough resources for the future generations. Remember, there is this belief, if ever resources can be overconsumed or be used in the abusive manner or destructive manner, they will be lost forever, and the future generations will not be able to obtain the same benefits from the environment that we enjoy today as the current generation. So it is very important for conservation to be in place to safeguard the use of the environment, using the environment in a sustainable way. We continue. Conservation applies in both renewable and non-renewable resources. So the conservation of renewable resources aims to ensure that they are not consumed faster than they can be replaced. Remember, if you overconsume trees, you cut trees in the way that is destructive, we know that they are renewable. However, if they are cut in a destructive manner, they will take time to be recovered. For the tree to be ready for being used for the particular production, it will take the maximum of 20 years. So if we destruct trees now, that will mean that in future we won't be having trees for the period of 20 years from now. So in that manner, as much as they are renewable, they must be used in a manner that is sustainable, in a manner that will allow them to last, even though they can be used, they will be regenerated, but they are not consumed faster than they can be replaced. Those are trees and renewable resources. Conservation of non-renewable resources aim to ensure that sufficient resources are kept even for future generations. It is very important for one to conserve non-renewable resources because they are endangered. They are in danger of extinction. They can be completed, and that once they are completed, they can be lost forever and they will never be recovered because they are regarded to be non-renewable resources. That's why there must be conservation strategies by the government to ensure that those species, the flora and fauna, are protected or are safeguarded so that they will be able to last for longer and not be used in the destructive manner. Conservation is undertaken in national parks, transplanter conservation areas, botanic gardens, nature reserves, marine reserves, world heritage sites, biosphere reserves, reptile and butterfly sanitaries, museums, buildings of special architectural and historical interest. These are examples of areas that are part of conservation in the world and in South Africa. Then preservation. If we talk about the preservation, we refer to the strategy that is used to safeguard the environment, maintaining its present value so that it remains intact. It doesn't get to be distracted and lose its present value. It remains beautiful and attractive even for future generations. That is the preservation. And then it concerns elements of the environment that are threatened to extinction, those that are in danger of extinction. So they should be kept intact so that they remain attractive and remain healthy even for future generations. Ecological system, an indigenous forest, a wetland, a river, mouth ecosystem, species of animals, bird or plants on the verge of extinction should be preserved. These are part of the natural environment that should be preserved so that future generation will be able to find them alive. We are trying to keep them intact, keep their present value, protect them from extinction so that they won't be used in the abusive manner or destructive manner that will result to them being completed or depleted, as they will be lost forever. If they are not preserved, they can be lost forever. Those are resources that are believed to be non-renewable, that are in danger of extinction. An increase in human population leads to the increase in the demand for animals, which lead to the animal extinction. That's why we had the campaign that is a part of rhino poaching. It was aiming at protecting the poaching of rhinos, because if they could be used in a destructive manner as they were killed rapidly, they would be lost forever, which is bad for the South African environment, bad for the South African tourism industry, because some tourists visit South Africa just to observe those rhinos because they are not available in their own countries. So if they can be abused and be overconsumed, they can be lost forever, and that will be bad for our economy, tourism industry, as well as the environment. So measures to sustainability, we talk about the market, the public sector intervention, and the public sector control. So this is an essay. You can come across an essay in this situation saying, discussing in detail measures taken by the government to ensure sustainable development. Also, we have an issue of the market. So we start with the market. Remember, if we talk about the market, we refer to the private sector. Keep this in your mind. The market is profit motive. Whatever that is done, the market is profit motive. It will always see environment as a common resource to create wealth. So in that situation, it will do less to safeguard the environment, but it will do more to extract resources so that it will be able to achieve its profits. So the market will always find it difficult to sustain the environment because it always wants to achieve its profit. Also, the market is always having delaying tactics to adapt to the latest technology that is not burning fossil fuels. So let's follow and see here. As for the market is driven by self-interest. It overconsumed resources without considering the damage it causes. Yes, the market overconsumes resources to achieve its profit. It doesn't consider the negative externality caused by itself on the environment, because the main aim for the market is to achieve the profit. So the market considers the environment as an asset to be used for its own benefit to achieve a profit. That's why I'm saying it sees environment as a common resource to create wealth. So sustainability is achieved in the free market only to the extent that resource prices rise as they become scarce, less available in bracket, and through the development of eco-friendly technology. So the market can be able to achieve environmental sustainability by using eco-friendly machines, using machines that are not burning fossil fuels, using machines that are not harmful into the into the ecosystem, or that are not exposing the air pollution. Also, having to adapt to the technology that is eco-friendly or green technology. Having also to do what? To be involved in recycling, reusing the used material so that it cannot be wasted into the grassland or water or into the ecosystem. So the market can only achieve, but remember, the sustainability of the environment requires a compromise. For the market to be able to sustain the environment, it has to compromise something, which is the profit that will be caused by the decrease in the production. If ever firms are not willing to cause more environmental damages, they need to produce less, because their machines are burning fossil fuel, by the way. So they must produce less. As they produce less, they compromise their profits. So it is very difficult. Also, they must use eco-friendly machines, but for them to adapt to that, they need to spend a lot of capital, which is a compromise because they will forfeit their profits in the short run. Technology is a problem. Is a problem to environmental degradation since machines used by industries are burning fossil fuels that will lead to air pollution or greenhouse gases moving to the ecosystem and damages the ozone layer, which will lead to what we call the climate change as well as the global warming. Technology can, however, be used as a solution to the environmental problems if industries can adapt to eco-friendly machines and methods using what we call the bulbs, electrical bulbs that are saving the power. That meaning they are not demanding much of power, which will lead to less burning of fossil fuels as we produce electricity. So those industries will be sustaining the environment in that case. And then the reason why the market fails to sustain the environment. The market sees the environment as a common resource to create wealth. We know that externalities such as air pollution caused by factories cannot be stopped without restrictive policies. The state must intervene with some policies that are very harsh for businesses not to cause most of air pollution. That can be using what we call the property right, using what we call marketable permits, command and control policies also. And then lack of knowledge. Businesses cause damage without realizing whatever damage is causing into the environment. E.g., companies making aerosol cans such as spray or deodorants and did not know the damage effect. The damaging effect they had into the ozone layer. Whatever chemical that they are creating, they will have an effect into the environment and cause what we call air pollution. Carelessness. People continue with harmful practices and leave future generations to worry about the consequences that they cause into the environment. So some of business become careless to the point that they waste material anywhere they want to without monitoring. That will be degrading the state of the environment. We continue with the market. Optimum market decisions. So market mechanism has failed when market forces fail to produce the desired result of environmental sustainability. All costs and benefits are not captured in the market price. The future cost, the future cost of the resource disappearing is not often considered. So you can come across the question to say, why does the market fail to sustain the environment? The market is profit motive, while sustaining the environment requires a compromise. The market sees environment as a common resource to create wealth. And then the market overconsumes resources because it wants to achieve its profit target or profit margins, which result to the destruction of both renewable and non-renewable resources. The market delays to adapt to the new technology that's not burning fossil fuel because that kind of capital or technology is too expensive or is cost effective. Those are some answers. Then the state intervention to environmental sustainability. We talk about granting of property rights. We talk about pay for the use of the environment. We talk about levying environmental taxes. We talk about pay for the environmental subsidies. We talk about issuing of marketable payments. We talk about CAC, that is command and control policies. We talk about voluntary agreements as well as the education. This is an essay, so be aware it can come in as an essay, and you must be able to discuss it in detail. In this situation, we talk about initially property rights, granting of property rights. We know that property rights refer to the what we call permissions that are given to people to take care of what belongs to them. So we know that if the government gives people property rights, that is regarded to be entitlements granted by the government to people as the primary owners of the particular property. And according to the conservationists, it is believed that people will always take care of what belongs to them. So property rights are permission given to people as primary owners of land. It is given in a form of tax deeds to guarantee people that people take care of what belongs to them. So the conservationist effect, people care for things that belong to them. That's why then government issue or provides property rights for the environmental sustainability. To prevent the flora and fauna, remember, living and non-living things, species from becoming extinct or from being depleted, people are granted property rights if they agree to preserve the flora and fauna. Those are species. Then property rights can be expanded to common goods such as the clean air. They can use this property rights and the ownership to do what? To protect the environment that they've been given to take care of. The Kyoto Protocol is an international agreement whereby developed countries pay developing countries for their right to pollute. And then we continue environmental charges. We know that people are paying for the using the environment. That is done in the monthly basis, but paid to the local authorities. The pricing of environment is one method used by the government to impose environmental charges. So this means the government levies a fee on consumers and producers for the waste, solid, liquid, and gas they produce and dump into the environment. In South Africa, local authorities levy charges from rubbish collection or sewage disposal on the household, businesses, and others. We continue environmental charges. In developed countries, emission charges are levied on industries and vehicles owners for discharging gases. We know that vehicles are paying for disposing the greenhouse gases to the environment. Also, there is a taxation for the use of tires on the road. So the best result is obtained if these charges are proportional to the waste produced. A fixed total charge, such as monthly or yearly tax, by contrast, will not encourage waste producers to reduce their waste, since it will not save them any money. Then we continue environmental taxes. Environmental taxes are taxes imposed on the output of goods that generate negative externalities to the environment, such as pollution. These are called green taxes or carbon taxes. And then carbon dioxide emissions from wineries and vehicles tires are taxed by the government. The tax rate is equal to the marginal external cost that is produced by that particular individual. In this case, and then the product already has a price, and the tax has the effect of increasing the price, which has been imposed as a part of environmental taxes or green taxes or carbon taxes. Environmental subsidies. This is the subsidy or financial support granted or given by the government to those individuals or businesses that are safeguarding the environment. So subsidies are granted to businesses to reduce environmental damage as they produce goods and services. The government subsidizes a new technology that saves energy, such as energy-saving bulbs or lights or solar geysers. And then environmental subsidies serve as a motive to business to be involved, as they will have to keep protecting the environment. So the subsidy they receive will encourage them to keep on protecting the environment from harm, as they will be using those, I would call it, conservative or sustainable ways in the environment. Environmental subsidies have an effect to the following: to encourage production of environmental friendly substitutes, such as the use of unleaded petrol, and also to encourage recycling of waste such as plastic, bottles, cans, and the cardboard. They can be reused. That the subsidy is given to such businesses that are reusing the used material, that are protecting the waste into the environment. And then the marketable permits. Remember, we talk about that licenses that are issued by the government to allow business to cause pollution to the certain level or certain degree. And then remember, business sell their licenses to other businesses if ever they have extra licenses while they are causing less pollution. These licenses or marketable permits are issued in South Africa by the Department of Minerals and what we call energy. In South Africa, marketable permits are granted by the Department of Minerals and Energy. So if a government wants to reduce pollution over time, the permits can be designed to reduce the amount of permitted pollution every year. The increase in prices for marketable permits can result to decrease in pollution amount into the environment, meaning if ever these licenses can be expensive, there will be less pollution into the environment. We continue now. Command and control policies, the CAC. the government enforces policy by setting maximum levels of emissions of pollution. So remember, this thing can be separated into three: the quality standards, the quantity standard, and also the effect. So most developed countries have regulations that control air and water pollution. So three approaches to CAC. Firstly, the quantity standard. In this situation, we refer to the amount of pollution that has been caused, irrespective of environmental impact. So how much pollution that has been caused by the particular industry or business. We don't consider the impact of it to the environment. Number two, the quality standards. We talk about the impact now of the pollution that has been omitted to the environment. What impact does it have? That's a quality standard. And then we have social impact standards. And then what impact does it have on the society? So the focus on the effect on people of the pollution omitted. The pollution that has been omitted, what impact does it have on people in the environment? That's a social impact. Those are command and control policies, or CAC, that are divided into three standards. And then we talk about the likes of voluntary agreements. So the government concludes agreements with businesses on a voluntary basis to cut pollution rather than enforcing them. So such agreements may involve formal contract and therefore be legally binding, or they may be more informal commitments made by business. Remember, businesses normally prefer voluntary agreements whereby there are no formal contracts. So that they won't be what we call monitored. So prefer voluntary agreements to regulations because they can negotiate such agreements to suit their own particular circumstances and build them into their planning. And then education. So education is used to try and change people's attitude towards the environment. So innovative approaches have been tried to in the developing world to educate people, e.g. setting up community wildlife reserves. And then also, if children and adults were made more aware of environmental issues and the consequence of their actions, then their assumptions or consumption habits would become more environmental friendly. They won't be using environment in the abusive manner. Education plays a major role in improving people's capacity to manage the environment. We know if people are well informed about the effect of polluting the environment, they try to be very much what we call protective to the environment. They don't litter anyway. They don't overdo the hunting. Under what we call those zoos or the forest. They ensure that they protect also the forestry. They don't waste use material into water and grasslands. Environmental awareness is integrated to the curriculum to create the society that is well informed about environmental importance. And then we move to the international problems. Biodiversity laws, chemical waste, hazardous waste, climate change policy, indigenous knowledge, as well as international protocol and agreements. So we'll be talking about these ones. Environmental problems are global problems because of pollution, because pollution from motor vehicles and the greenhouse effect has an impact to the entire world. Whenever we cause pollution in South Africa, especially air pollution, it affects the entire world. So this is an international content, or the entire world concern in this kind of the air pollution. Polluted air and water move from one country to another, and if the ocean is polluted in a certain country, it can affect other countries in the world. The world's biggest concerns are the loss of biodiversity or biodiversity loss, toxics and hazardous waste, and the global warming. These are the main challenges internationally. This has led to the government committing themselves to hundreds of multilateral environmental agreements that are in place to try and protect the environment. So biodiversity loss. So in this case, we refer to the species that become extinct, that die out completely, and they can never be reversed or recovered. So modern techniques such as gene transplant can limit the loss of species that are endangered. So the Convention on International Trade in the endangered species site set many policies that to deal with the loss of species that are in danger of extinction that cannot never be recovered if they can be lost. Preventing biodiversity loss results to species lasting longer even for future generations. So it is important to protect the biodiversity. Illegal hunting, unlimited fishing, and unregulated deforestation endangers lives of plants, animals, and the environment. So these are activities that result to mostly biodiversity loss in our environment. And then we continue. Then we move to the next one, which is chemical waste. So chemical waste is known as a toxic waste, has a negative effect into the on the living beings and can cause infertility or death. If chemicals are wasted or disposed into running water environment, that can cause a huge damage. Like I mentioned before, if it is wasted into running water, animals can die that are using the water, and then also people drinking that water can also die. Plants that are irrigated through that water can also die and can cause what you call infertility or death. So it is a bad effect. It has a bad effect into the environment. Chemical waste need to be carefully managed or monitored to ensure it does not seep into the groundwater. Chemical waste result to immediate death. For example, from insecticides or pesticides, death after a period of time due to digestive incapacity, nerve malfunctioning, tissue degeneration, cancer, and infertility of humans, animals, and plants. They become infertile because of the chemicals they have swallowed. The Stockholm Protocol is a United Nations agreement to limit chemical waste. It is very important for you to note each and every international agreement that is linked to any international problem. We'll continue with the what we call the hazardous waste. Remember, if we talk of the hazardous waste, we talk about the solid waste, the waste of radioactive material that take time to decompose, such as the waste of cardboards, such as the waste of bottles, as well as plastics. Hazardous waste is highly toxic. It has a slow decomposition rate. It stays poisonous for a longer period of time. The most hazardous waste or dangerous waste is radioactive waste from nuclear power. So the Basel Convention is an international agreement to manage nuclear waste. South Africa is a signatory of this agreement. The Basel Convention is the one that was mainly chosen to monitor what we call the hazardous waste. Remember, it's a very toxic waste that will be disposed to the environment and take time to decompose, cannot be finished easily. And then also it includes the waste of cardboards, bottles, and plastics into the environment. It's a radioactive material, such as the waste of from the nuclear power. So that's a part of hazardous waste. And then we continue with what we call the climate change. So remember, climate change is unpredictable change in weather patterns. So global warming primary causes the climate change. And then climate change can be reversed through widespread international cooperation, e.g. sharing weather information and weather patterns, agreeing on to limit pollution, and banning chemical products such as greenhouse gases that damage the ozone layer and the entire ecosystem. So the Kyoto Protocol of 1997 is an international agreement to limit production of greenhouse gases because voluntary reductions of the carbon dioxide levels did not succeed. Keep this in mind. Climate change is the one that is supported through what we call the Kyoto Protocol. That was that took place in Japan to ensure that it safeguards the waste of what we call the material that can damage ozone layer and ecosystem to cause what we call the air pollution and the climate change. And then we continue the loss of indigenous knowledge. Remember, this is the knowledge that was used by forefathers, which was transferred from one generation to another. It is very important to protect this kind of the knowledge because if it can be lost, it can never be recovered. So indigenous people have vast amounts of knowledge about the natural environment which they use to make living, and it was not harmful into the environment. It was rather protective. Indigenous people traditionally use organic methods and natural processes to earn living and produce under farming industry. As indigenous people lose their habitats or are urbanized, this knowledge is disappearing and is being lost to the world forever. And this knowledge, if it can be lost because people are becoming more modernized, it will never be recovered. That's why we have a convention that protects the loss of indigenous knowledge. Local capacity building is very important for the environmental sustainability of indigenous people, e.g. finding a way for them to earn living in their traditional environment without causing any harm in the environment. We know that self-sufficient farming was not harmful into the environment, but was protecting the environment because no chemicals were used to make our land fertile. fertile. It was only what we call the traditional way of doing things that was used to ensure that our land remained fertile and also it becomes productive without having to cause any harm into our land or the environment. And then our lesson, and here, and I believe this lesson will assist you as you prepare for your preparatory examination. I, Mr. Mhlomo, thank you. I will see you again on our revision for paper 1, which will be about revising both macroeconomics and economic pursuit. Remember, on that particular lesson or on that day, we won't be about teaching. It will be about the